Welcome back, friends, to Dreams of Disclosure. Tonight, we're settling into something different, something quieter, something designed to slip you gently into the realm of sleep while exploring the strange and unsettling encounters humanity has experienced with visitors from beyond our world. If you're listening to this in the quiet hours before dawn, in the darkness of your bedroom, or in that peaceful moment when the day's chaos finally releases its grip, then you've come to the right place. The stories we're about to share are real accounts, documented testimonies, and unexplained phenomena that have left witnesses changed forever. They are not meant to terrify but to intrigue, to make you wonder about the vast mysteries that surround our small planet. As you drift deeper into comfort, letting your pillow embrace you and your mind begin its descent into sleep, we'll walk together through encounters that blur the line between our world and something far stranger. Across the centuries, human beings have reported meeting entities that don't belong to our known world. Some came with messages of peace. Others arrived in silence, their intentions unknown. Many left behind only questions, a sense of violation, or a lingering feeling that we are not alone, that something watches us even now, even as you lie in the safety of your home with nothing but darkness outside your window. The phenomenon we're about to explore has been called many things. UFOs, unidentified flying objects. UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. Alien encounters, extraterrestrial visitations, close encounters of the third kind. But what ties all these reports together is something more fundamental. The sense that something is here, something that moves through our skies, our forests, our quiet nights, and our very bedrooms without asking permission. Before we begin, understand this. Whether these encounters are literally what they appear to be, manifestations of our deepest fears, or something else entirely, they have shaped how humanity sees itself. They have challenged our understanding of biology, physics, consciousness, and reality itself. They have inspired wonder and terror in equal measure. For those who claim to have experienced these encounters directly, the experiences are undeniably real. The fear is real. The missing time is real. The scars, both physical and psychological, are real. For researchers and investigators, the consistency of these reports across decades, continents, and cultures suggests something genuine beneath the surface, something that demands our attention. As the night deepens and your eyes grow heavy, let these stories wash over you not as evidence of danger, but as proof of mystery. For in a universe so vast and incomprehensible, what could be more soothing than knowing that we still have unanswered questions, that wonder still exists, that there are secrets yet to be revealed? Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Let the familiar sounds of your home settle around you like a blanket. Feel the safety of your bed, the warmth of your surroundings. And now, let us drift together into the realm of the unknown, where visitors have come, where mysteries wait, and where sleep promises respite from the questions that haunt us. The concept of alien contact has existed in human consciousness for far longer than we might assume. Medieval religious texts spoke of beings descending from the heavens. Indigenous cultures around the world documented encounters with sky people and star beings. Ancient astronaut theories suggest that humanity itself may have been visited, guided, or even created by extraterrestrial intelligences. Yet it wasn't until the 20th century that these encounters took on the technological appearance we recognize today. The shift happened gradually. In the early 1900s, reports of unusual craft in the sky were rare and often dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications. But as aviation technology advanced, as people became more familiar with aircraft, and as the world grew smaller through improved communication, the reports changed. They became more frequent, more detailed, more structured. By the 1940s and 1950s, the phenomenon had accelerated dramatically. Military personnel began reporting encounters. Commercial pilots filed official reports. Entire communities witnessed events that left them changed, frightened, confused. The United States government launched Project Blue Book in 1952, an official Air Force investigation into unidentified flying objects. Over the next 2 decades, the project investigated more than 12,000 sightings. Many were explained. Some were not. For those investigating these phenomena, several patterns emerged. The entities encountered could be categorized into types, each with distinct characteristics and behaviors. Understanding these categories helps us make sense of the reports, to see the consistency within the chaos, to recognize that these encounters follow certain patterns. Some beings were described as small, gray-skinned, with enormous black eyes. Others were tall, humanoid, with blonde hair and radiant presence. Still others were reptilian, insectoid, or so alien that human language struggled to describe them. Each type seemed to have different intentions, different methods, different goals. The witnesses to these encounters came from all walks of life. Farmers and pilots, police officers and children, scientists and military personnel. The accounts varied in detail but remained consistent in their core elements. Something came from the sky. Something landed or hovered. Something interacted with humans, sometimes gently, sometimes with apparent violation. For those lying in the dark listening to these words, it's important to understand that you are not alone in your curiosity, your fear, your sense that something strange exists just beyond the edge of our official understanding. Millions of people have felt this pull toward the unknown. Millions more have experienced it directly. Whether the encounters we're about to describe are literal alien visitations, psychological phenomena, interdimensional intrusions, or something we don't yet have words for, they represent something real in human experience. They represent our capacity for wonder, our willingness to face the unknown, and our deep desire to understand our place in a cosmos that seems far too large and far too mysterious for our current understanding. As you settle deeper into sleep, remember that the world you wake to in the morning is the same world where these mysteries persist, the same world where the unexplained continues to occur. And perhaps that knowledge, that certainty that there are still frontiers to explore, still questions without answers, might bring you a strange kind of peace. For what could be more comforting than knowing that despite all our technology, all our science, all our maps and measures, the universe still holds secrets? What could be more human than that desire to know what waits beyond the darkness? Let us begin our journey then, into the quiet realm of the inexplicable, where sleep and mystery intertwine, where the stories we tell ourselves become the dreams we drift into, and where the unknown waits with patient silence for those brave enough to listen. The first time you truly understand that you are not alone in the universe is often the last moment of peace you will ever have. For the witnesses we'll discuss tonight, that moment came unexpectedly, violently, in ways that shattered their understanding of what was possible. Yet in the years after, in quiet reflection, many found a strange acceptance. The universe, they learned, is far stranger than any comfort allows. To understand alien contact, we must first understand the visitors themselves. Over decades of reported encounters, certain types of beings have emerged repeatedly in testimony from people who have never met, who come from different cultures, different hemispheres, different time periods. The consistency is remarkable. The implications are profound. The beings most frequently described are what researchers have come to call the Greys. Small in stature, typically between 3 and 4 feet tall, they are said to possess hairless, gray-skinned bodies, disproportionately large heads, and most distinctively, enormous black eyes. These eyes are often described in terms of awe and terror. They seem to convey intelligence of a nature wholly alien to human understanding. They appear to communicate telepathically, projecting thoughts and images directly into the minds of witnesses. This form of communication is perhaps the most unsettling aspect, as it suggests a violation of the most private space of human consciousness, the mind itself. The Greys' physical form suggests evolutionary pressures completely different from those that shaped humanity. Their spindly limbs, their small mouths, the absence of visible ears or nostrils, all suggest a being adapted for an environment profoundly different from Earth. Some researchers theorize they evolved in lower gravity, in different atmospheric conditions, perhaps in underground or underwater environments on their home world. Others suggest they may not be biological at all, but engineered creatures, bioengineered tools created by a more advanced intelligence to perform specific functions. When witnesses describe encounters with Greys, certain patterns emerge. The beings display no emotion. They work with clinical efficiency. They examine human subjects with the detachment of scientists studying lab specimens. Many abductees report being placed on tables, subjected to procedures that resemble medical examinations, with tissue samples being taken from various parts of the body. The procedures are not described as painful necessarily, but as deeply invasive, violating in ways that leave psychological scars. The Greys often appear not to work alone. In many accounts, they operate under the supervision of taller beings, sometimes called the insectoids for their resemblance to praying mantises, sometimes described as reptilian due to their scaled skin and cold demeanor. This hierarchy suggests organization, structure, perhaps even a chain of command. If the Greys are the workers, then these taller beings are the supervisors, the decision-makers, the intelligences that guide the operations. One particularly disturbing aspect of Grey encounters involves what researchers have called the hybrid program. Multiple abductees, particularly women, have reported being taken aboard craft, subjected to procedures involving reproductive organs, and then in subsequent abductions shown hybrid children. These beings are neither fully human nor fully alien, but something in between. Witnesses describe them as possessing humanoid forms but with features that mark them as alien. Large eyes, unusual skin tones, a fragility that suggests they are not well adapted to Earth's environment. The implications of the hybrid program are staggering. If such a program truly exists, it suggests a long-term project spanning perhaps decades or even centuries. It suggests that human genetic material has been systematically harvested and used to create a new species, one that might be capable of existing in our world in ways that pure aliens could not. Some theorists have proposed that these hybrids are already among us, living in secrecy, perhaps in positions of influence, waiting for some undisclosed moment. Beyond the Greys, another category of beings frequently reported are those often called the Nordics or the Space Brothers. These beings are starkly different from the Greys. Tall, often exceeding 6 feet, they are described as beautiful in a way that is almost unsettling. Fair-skinned, often blonde-haired, with large luminous eyes, they resemble what human art has traditionally depicted as angels. In early encounters, particularly during what researchers call the contactee era of the 1950s, these beings arrived with messages of peace, warnings about nuclear weapons, and suggestions that humanity stood at a crossroads. The Nordics seem to operate from a different agenda than the Greys. Where Greys appear clinical and detached, Nordics are described as warm, communicative, even affectionate. Where Greys examine and extract, Nordics teach and advise. Some witnesses have reported feeling a sense of profound peace in the presence of Nordics, a sense that they were in the company of enlightened beings, wise guides from a more advanced civilization. Yet even the apparent benevolence of the Nordics raises troubling questions. In more recent accounts, Nordics appear alongside Greys in abduction scenarios, sometimes overseeing examinations, sometimes providing comfort to terrified abductees. This has led researchers to speculate about possible collaboration, about hybrids being created not between humans and Greys, but between humans and Nordics, or perhaps involving both simultaneously. A third category that emerges repeatedly in encounter reports are the Reptilians. These beings are described with evident fear and repulsion. Tall, muscular, scaled, with yellow or red eyes featuring slit pupils, they represent a predatory intelligence. Unlike the Greys, who seem detached, or the Nordics, who seem benevolent, the Reptilians are described as commanding, authoritarian, often malevolent. In the mythology of alien contact that has developed over decades, the Reptilians occupy a unique position. They are often described as an older intelligence, perhaps native to Earth itself, existing in underground complexes or in dimensional spaces adjacent to our own. Some theories suggest that reptilians have been influencing human history for millennia, controlling world events, influencing human development, maintaining a hidden dominion over human civilization. The fear induced by reptilian encounters is distinctive. Witnesses often report an overwhelming sense of dread, a psychic pressure that seems to radiate from these beings. Some describe it as a form of telepathic control, a capacity to induce terror or compliance through mental power. The experience is uniformly negative, often leaving witnesses with lasting trauma. Then there are the insectoids, beings that resemble large praying mantises or other arthropods. These creatures are typically described as 7 to 9 feet tall, thin-limbed, with triangular heads and large slanted eyes. Like the reptilians, insectoids seem to occupy positions of authority in abduction scenarios, often overseeing procedures performed by smaller greys. Their appearance is thoroughly alien, designed to inspire discomfort and fear. What's remarkable about these different categories is their consistency across reports. A witness in Japan in the 1970s described a being nearly identical to one reported by a farmer in New Hampshire in the 1960s, and both match descriptions from accounts in Brazil, Australia, and Europe. This consistency across time and space is difficult to explain through coincidence or cultural contamination alone. The first documented modern encounter with beings that would become known as Greys occurred in 1961, when Betty and Barley Hill were driving through New Hampshire late at night. They reported seeing a bright light in the sky that descended toward their car. What followed was an experience they could not initially remember. It was only under hypnosis that they recalled being taken aboard a craft and subjected to an examination by small, gray-skinned creatures with enormous black eyes. The Hill case was remarkable not just for the detailed description of the beings, but for the corroboration it received. The couple underwent thorough psychological evaluation and was found to be healthy, intelligent, and not prone to fabrication. Their account became the template, the foundational narrative around which subsequent reports would organize themselves. Before the Hill case, descriptions of alien beings varied widely. Some were tall and radiant, others were humanoid but strange, still others defied categorization. After the Hill case, a clear archetype emerged. The gray became the default image of an alien in human consciousness. And as more people learned about the Hill case, more people reported encountering beings matching that description. Whether this represented actual alien contacts or cultural contamination remains debated among researchers. Yet the consistency goes beyond the grays. Reports of reptilians, Nordics, and insectoids emerged independently, from witnesses who had no knowledge of previous accounts, who came from isolated communities, who had no access to UFO literature or media. A researcher in Australia in the 1980s might encounter testimony from a witness describing a reptilian being in nearly identical terms to one a researcher in England had collected in the 1960s. The question becomes inescapable. If these encounters are hallucinations, misidentifications, or psychological phenomena, how can we account for such remarkable consistency? Conversely, if they represent genuine alien contact, what does it tell us about the universe that multiple species, possibly from multiple star systems, are visiting Earth, conducting examinations, and in some cases apparently attempting to create hybrid offspring? One of the earliest mass sightings occurred in 1947 at Roswell, New Mexico. A rancher discovered debris scattered across his property. The material was strange, lightweight, metallic, bearing symbols that resembled no known language. Military investigators arrived and initially issued a statement that a flying disc had been recovered. Hours later, that statement was retracted. A weather balloon, they claimed. Nothing extraordinary. The Roswell incident became the seed from which modern UFO culture grew. It established several crucial narratives. That the military was aware of and concealing alien contact, that physical evidence existed but was hidden from public view, and that governments around the world were engaged in a coordinated cover-up. Whether or not the initial Roswell event involved actual alien contact remains disputed, but its cultural impact was undeniable. In the decades that followed, reported sightings multiplied. The 1950s saw waves of UFO reports across North America and Europe. The 1960s brought the Betty and Barley Hill case and a proliferation of abduction reports. The 1970s and 1980s saw the emergence of researchers like Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, who conducted detailed investigations into abduction cases and documented the hybrid program narrative. Each era brought its own characteristics. Early sightings focused on craft in the sky, mysterious lights, close encounters. Later cases incorporated abduction narratives, missing time, medical examinations. Modern reports include internet documentation, video evidence, and coordinated witness accounts from multiple observers. The phenomenon has evolved, adapted, or perhaps been more accurately reported as communication technology improved. Consider the position of the witness in these encounters. You are ordinary, going about your life, perhaps driving home late at night, perhaps sleeping in your bed. Suddenly, normality is disrupted. A light appears, a craft descends. Or perhaps you are simply taken, finding yourself aboard an alien vessel with no memory of how you arrived. The beings you encounter are utterly alien, their intentions unclear, their capabilities far exceeding your own. For many witnesses, the aftermath is profound. Some develop intense fear of the dark or of being alone. Others experience nightmares or a sense of violation that persists for years. A few report positive transformations, a sense that they were chosen for some purpose, that their encounter represented a meaningful moment in cosmic history. Most fall somewhere in between, trying to integrate an experience that defies rational explanation, struggling to tell a story that no one believes. The entities in the dark, then, are not a single phenomenon but many. They may represent multiple species, multiple agendas, multiple purposes. They may be truly alien, genuinely non-human intelligence from other worlds. They may be interdimensional beings, native to dimensions adjacent to our own. They may be time travelers from Earth's future. Or they may be manifestations of human consciousness, fears and desires given form through altered states of perception. What remains certain is this: countless people report encountering beings that are undeniably not human. These beings seem to possess technology and knowledge far beyond our current understanding. They interact with humans in ways that leave physical and psychological marks. And they continue to do so night after night, year after year, suggesting an agenda, a purpose, something we do not yet fully understand. As you lie in the darkness listening to these words, consider the possibility that you are not truly alone. That somewhere in the quiet of the night, visitors move through spaces we cannot perceive. That the world is far stranger than our waking minds usually acknowledge. And find comfort in that thought, for in acknowledging the unknown, we acknowledge the vast, infinite potential of existence itself. There are moments when the world as we know it slips away, when the familiar becomes strange, when the rules that govern ordinary reality seem to suspend themselves, allowing something other to press through. These are the moments that transform ordinary people into witnesses of the extraordinary. The phenomenon of close encounters has been classified by researchers into distinct categories. A close encounter of the first kind involves sighting a UFO at relatively close range but with no direct contact. A close encounter of the second kind includes physical effects, such as electromagnetic interference with vehicles or equipment. A close encounter of the third kind involves actual contact with alien beings. Beyond these official categories, researchers have identified close encounters of the fourth kind, which involve abduction, and close encounters of the fifth kind, which involve direct communication or intentional contact with alien intelligences. The stories that fill the space between these categories are countless. They span continents and decades. They involve people from every walk of life. And they share remarkable similarities that suggest something genuine beneath the surface, something that transcends cultural boundaries and individual psychology. Consider the experience of someone driving alone on a rural road at night. The landscape is dark, familiar. Your headlights cut through the darkness, revealing only the road ahead. The radio plays softly. The windows are closed against the cool night air. You are alone, safe within your vehicle, moving through a world that makes sense. Then something appears ahead, not on the road, but above it. A light brighter than any star, hovering impossibly still in the night sky. At first, you might mistake it for an airplane, an exceptionally bright plane approaching for landing. But something about it is wrong. The light doesn't flicker. It doesn't move in the way aircraft move. It seems to be watching you. You slow your vehicle. The light descends. Not quickly, but deliberately, as though on an invisible string. Lower and lower until it seems to be directly above your car. The light intensifies. Your vehicle's engine stutters. The radio emits static. Your headlights flicker. In this moment, you understand that something beyond your control has noticed you. that you have been selected for observation, that you are no longer simply a human driving through the night, but a specimen of interest to something other. This scenario, in countless variations, has been reported thousands of times. The details differ, but the essential experience remains consistent. A being or craft becomes aware of the witness. The witness becomes aware that they are being observed. The normal rules of the world seem to pause, allowing something incomprehensible to occur. The electromagnetic effects reported in such encounters are particularly intriguing. When a UFO is said to be present, witnesses frequently report that vehicle engines fail, headlights dim, radios emit strange sounds. These effects are consistent enough that some researchers have theorized that UFOs operate through some form of electromagnetic propulsion or generation, and that the fields they produce naturally interfere with electrical systems. One case that exemplifies these phenomena occurred in 1957 in Malevolent, Texas. Over a single night, numerous drivers in the area reported their vehicles stalling when a bright object appeared in the sky. Some reported the object hovering directly over their vehicles. Others described its light illuminating their cars as though conducting inspection. In every case, the vehicles would stall when the object was directly overhead and restart only after it had departed. The Malevolent case is remarkable because of its mass witnessing. Multiple independent reports, all occurring within a narrow window of time, all describing nearly identical phenomena. The consistency is difficult to attribute to hoaxing or hallucination. It suggests something genuinely anomalous, genuinely inexplicable by conventional means. Yet, electromagnetic interference is only one of the physical effects reported. Witnesses have described intense heat in the presence of UFOs, despite no visible source of flames or combustion. They have described paralysis, an inability to move or speak even as they remained conscious. They have described a tingling sensation, as though standing in an electrical field. They have described the smell of ozone or sulfur, a chemical tang that lingered after the encounter ended. One particularly striking account comes from a security guard in Italy named Pierluigi Zanfrida, who reported not only seeing a UFO but being subjected to physical examination by tall reptilian beings. The beings, he described under hypnosis, were nearly 9 feet tall, with scaled skin and glowing eyes. They communicated telepathically, explaining that he had been selected for study, that his species was at a critical juncture, and that they were monitoring humanity's development. More disturbing than the examination itself was the object that Zanfrida claimed the beings inserted into his skull. A small sphere, he said, meant to monitor him, to track his movements and thoughts. For years after the encounter, he reported a persistent sense of being observed, of his privacy violated on a level more intimate than any physical intrusion could achieve. The psychological aftermath of close encounters is often as significant as the encounter itself. Witnesses report lasting anxiety, a sense of being marked or chosen. Many become obsessed with understanding what happened, spending years researching UFO phenomena, seeking out other witnesses, attempting to make sense of an experience that defies sense. Some witnesses develop what might be called UFO PTSD. They experience nightmares, become hypervigilant, struggle with the sense that the encounter was somehow predatory. Others report the opposite, a sense of spiritual awakening, a feeling that they were chosen for a reason, that their encounter was a gift rather than a violation. For police officers and military personnel who have witnessed UFOs, the experience raises particular complications. These are people trained to observe carefully, to report accurately, to remain rational under pressure. When such individuals report encounters with unexplained phenomena, their testimony carries significant weight. Yet many face ridicule or pressure to recant, to reframe their experience in conventional terms, to align their testimony with official explanations. In 1976, Belgian police officers pursued a triangular craft through the night sky. Radar installations tracked the object. Military aircraft were scrambled. Yet in all their efforts to intercept or photograph the craft, they were unsuccessful. It moved with apparent impunity through their airspace, outmaneuvering their jets, unaffected by their weapons. The experience left them humbled, confronted with the reality that humanity's most sophisticated technology was inadequate against the craft's capabilities. The question that haunts all witnesses is simple but profound. Why? Why were they selected? Why were they observed? What purpose did the examination serve? What is being done with the genetic material that was taken? Why does the observation continue year after year across generations? Some researchers theorize that humans are being monitored as part of a long-term study, that beings from other worlds are documenting our development, recording our behaviors, assessing our progress or regression. This perspective casts human civilization as a kind of cosmic laboratory, observed and studied by intelligences far more advanced than ourselves. Others suggest something more sinister, that humans are being harvested for genetic material, for organs, for purposes we can only speculate about. That the visitors are not dispassionate scientists but something closer to predators, utilizing our species for their own unfathomable purposes. Still others propose something more ambiguous. That the visitors are attempting to create a bridge between their civilization and ours. That the hybrids being created are meant to facilitate eventual coexistence, a blending of species that will benefit both. What stands beyond dispute is that close encounters transform the people who experience them. They are no longer simply human beings living ordinary lives. They are witnesses to something profound, something that suggests the world is far larger, far stranger, and far less under human control than we typically assume. In many cases, witnesses to close encounters report receiving information, impressions, or visions during or after their encounters. Some report being shown images of environmental destruction, warnings about humanity's trajectory toward catastrophe. Others describe visions of peace, unity, and spiritual evolution. Still others report receiving technical information, knowledge about physics or propulsion systems that their ordinary minds could not have generated. The implants that some abductees claim to have received represent another dimension of close encounters. Small devices, often located behind ears or in nasal cavities, detected through X-rays or MRI imaging. Some researchers theorize these are tracking devices, meant to monitor the abductee's location and vital signs. Others suggest they are communication devices, designed to transmit information or to allow the visitors to monitor thoughts. What is remarkable is that people from completely different parts of the world report nearly identical implants in identical locations. Without access to each other's testimonies or to any shared source of information, they describe devices that are strikingly similar. This consistency is difficult to explain through hoaxing or suggestion alone. The technology required to insert such a device without leaving detectable surgical marks suggests capabilities far beyond anything humanity currently possesses. The fact that standard medical imaging sometimes fails to locate implants that witnesses insist are present suggests a technology made from materials or operating on principles we do not understand. For those who have experienced close encounters, the nights are often the most difficult. When darkness falls, when the world quiets, the memories return. The feeling of being watched, the sense that the visitors might return, the lingering questions about what was done, what was taken, what was implanted. Yet many witnesses also report a strange acceptance, a sense that resistance is futile, that struggling against the phenomenon only causes additional pain. Some develop what might be called a Stockholm Syndrome relationship with their visitors, expressing affection for beings that have violated and examined them, suggesting that they were chosen, that their experiences served a greater purpose. This psychological adaptation, while seemingly pathological from one perspective, may represent a rational coping mechanism. If you have been abducted, if you have been examined, if you know with absolute certainty that you can be taken despite locks and walls and technology, then you are in a position from which there is no escape. Resistance becomes futile. Acceptance becomes the only path to psychological survival. In the darkness of night, as you lie in your bed listening to these words, consider the possibility that you or someone you know has experienced a close encounter. Consider that the person across the street or in your workplace may carry memories of something extraordinary. Consider that the world is populated by witnesses, many of whom have never spoken, many of whom have been dismissed or mocked when they did. The close encounters continue. The observations go on. Night after night, in quiet rural areas and busy cities, ordinary people report extraordinary experiences. They report beings of impossible appearance. They report technology that violates all laws of physics. They report a sense of being seen, examined, evaluated by intelligences that operate by rules we do not understand. And in the morning, the world continues as though nothing has happened. The coffee is made. The work begins. The mundane tasks fill the day. But for the witness, something has fundamentally changed. They know with a certainty that no skeptic can shake, that something is here. Something is watching. Something is interested in us. There is a form of terror more profound than physical violence. It is the terror of lost time, of consciousness interrupted, of waking with no memory of what was done while you were absent from yourself. This is the experience at the heart of abduction narratives, the category of close encounters that has generated the most controversy, the most ridicule, and the most compelling testimony. The phenomenon of missing time in UFO encounters appears consistently across hundreds of documented cases. A person is driving home, aware of the time, aware of the distance remaining. Suddenly, they become aware of events they cannot explain. When they check the time, hours have passed. They have no memory of the journey. They find themselves in a different location than they expected. Their vehicle's odometer does not match the distance they remember traveling. The experience is deeply disorienting. It creates a fundamental rupture in the sense of continuous consciousness, the sense that they are a unified being moving continuously through time. To lose time is to lose a piece of yourself, to have evidence that your mind is not your own, that you can be absent from yourself without knowing. In the 1970s and 1980s, as researchers began to investigate these cases more thoroughly, they developed a technique to help abductees recover memories of their missing time. Hypnotic regression, conducted under controlled conditions by trained psychiatrists and psychologists, allowed people to revisit their experiences, to remember what their conscious minds had been unable to recall. The memories that emerged from these sessions were remarkably consistent. People would describe being paralyzed, unable to move, finding themselves aboard a craft with no memory of how they arrived. They would describe beings surrounding them, beings with large eyes and small mouths, beings that communicated not through sound but through direct telepathic transmission of thoughts and images into their minds. More disturbingly, they would describe medical procedures, instruments inserted into body cavities, samples of tissue extracted. In some cases, women reported what felt like gynecological examinations being performed by the beings. Men reported sensations in their genital regions, suggesting extraction of sperm samples. One of the most extensively documented abduction cases involved a woman named Kathleen Davis, who reported multiple abductions over a period of years. Under hypnosis, she described not only being abducted herself but being shown hybrid children, offspring that appeared to be part human and part alien. She was told, she recalled, that these were her children, the products of genetic material extracted during her first abduction. In subsequent abductions, she was allowed to interact with these hybrid children, to feel the connection between herself and beings that were not fully human. The emotional impact of such memories was devastating. Kathleen described grief at the loss of children she had never carried in her womb, never known to exist until the memories were recovered. She described a sense of violation more profound than any rape, a theft of her genetic legacy, a reduction of her humanity to raw biological material to be used for purposes she could not understand or control. Yet the veracity of memories retrieved through hypnotic regression is controversial. Skeptics and neuroscientists note that hypnosis does not reliably recover true memories. Under hypnosis, the mind is suggestible, prone to filling in blanks, prone to confabulation, to creating plausible narratives where none existed. A skilled hypnotist, even an unconsciously biased one, might guide a subject toward memories of alien abduction when the original experience might have been something entirely different. Yet the consistency across cases remains striking. People from different regions, different ages, different educational backgrounds, with no knowledge of each other's accounts, describe remarkably similar experiences under hypnosis. They describe the same kinds of beings, the same kinds of procedures, the same sense of missing time. One hypothesis that has been proposed is that the abductions are real, but that their nature is different from what witnesses consciously believe. Perhaps the beings are interdimensional rather than extraterrestrial, slipping through adjacent realities to interact with humans. Perhaps they are time travelers, visitors from humanity's future. Perhaps they are psychological phenomena, manifestations of the mind encountering something that defies categorization. The physical evidence sometimes associated with abductions is equally ambiguous. Some abductees report waking with unexplained marks or scars. Straight lines, geometric patterns, bruises in locations they have no memory of having struck themselves. Some report finding small metallic objects in their bodies, detectable through medical imaging. These physical marks could be evidence of actual procedures performed by alien visitors. Or they could be marks inflicted by the abductee on themselves, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps as a way of validating recovered memories. Or they could be marks caused by completely mundane sources, interpreted through the lens of alien abduction expectations. The challenge for researchers is that not all the evidence is ambiguous. Some abductees report abductions witnessed by multiple family members. A family waking to find all members missing for a period of time, or finding themselves all aboard a craft simultaneously. These group abductions are more difficult to attribute to individual psychology. Moreover, some abductees report interactions with the beings that demonstrate knowledge the abductee could not have possessed. Communication of technical information, knowledge about physics or cosmology that the abductee did not consciously know. Yet these claims are difficult to verify, and in many cases, the information provided by the visitors proves to be either already known to science or indistinguishable from plausible-sounding pseudoscience. The question of what happens during missing time is perhaps the most fundamental question in UFO research. If we cannot explain the missing time, if we cannot understand what occurs during those lost hours, then we cannot fully comprehend the nature of the phenomenon. We are investigating something by its surface manifestations, its effects, its psychological aftermath, but not its essential nature. Some researchers have proposed that the phenomenon of missing time itself is the purpose. That the visitors are testing human consciousness, exploring the capacity of the human mind to lose continuity, to be absent from itself and still maintain a sense of identity. If consciousness is transferable, if it can be separated from the body, if it can be suspended and restarted, then consciousness becomes a technology, something that can be manipulated and studied. This perspective, while speculative, aligns with the reports of abductees who describe seeming to experience multiple locations simultaneously during their abductions. A sense of being on a craft while simultaneously remaining in their bed. A sense of watching their own body lying paralyzed while their consciousness is elsewhere. A sense that mind and body can be separated, that consciousness can exist independent of the physical form. If such separation is possible, if consciousness can be extracted from the body and transferred elsewhere, then the implications for philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience are staggering. It would suggest that consciousness is not an emergent property of the brain's electrical activity, but something more fundamental, something that can exist independent of physical form. The abduction phenomenon also raises questions about agency and autonomy. When someone is abducted, their agency is removed. They are taken without their consent, subjected to procedures without their permission, examined and manipulated by beings they did not invite. The violation is complete and total. Yet, for some abductees, over time, a different relationship with their visitors develops. They begin to see their abductions not as violations but as appointments, as meetings arranged in advance at an unconscious level. They report a sense of connection with certain beings, a sense that these beings are concerned with their welfare, that they are being guided toward a greater purpose. This shift from victim to willing participant is profound. It suggests that the beings, whatever they are, have the capacity to modify human consciousness, to alter perception, to reframe violation as blessing. If they possess such power, what else might they be capable of? The question of whether abductions truly occur at the physical level or occur in some other realm remains central to the debate. Skeptics suggest that abduction experiences might be a form of sleep paralysis, a condition in which the mind awakens while the body remains in the paralysis that accompanies REM sleep. During sleep paralysis, people often hallucinate presences in their rooms, feel crushing pressure on their chests, experience vivid imagery that feels absolutely real. Yet sleep paralysis does not explain missing time. It does not explain physical marks. It does not explain memories that persist with perfect clarity years after the event. And it does not explain the consistency of abduction narratives across people who have never heard of sleep paralysis, never studied UFO phenomena, never expected to encounter aliens. What remains clear is that for those who experience abductions, the events are undeniably real. Whether that reality is physical, psychological, interdimensional, or something we have no words for, the abductee's mind carries the memories. The abductee's body may carry the marks. The abductee's psyche carries the trauma or, in some cases, the sense of purpose and connection. As you lie in the darkness, imagining what it would be like to lose time, to wake with no memory of hours that have passed, consider the vulnerability of consciousness. Consider that your mind might not be entirely your own, that gaps might exist in your memory that you have attributed to sleep or distraction but that might represent something more sinister. Consider that every night when you close your eyes and sleep, you surrender consciousness for hours, remain utterly vulnerable, unable to resist or defend yourself. Most nights pass without incident. You sleep, you wake, the world continues as expected. But for some, for the witnesses whose stories we carry in the research and literature of UFO phenomena, the night brings more than sleep. It brings visitors. It brings the theft of time. It brings the violation of the most private spaces of consciousness. And in the morning, they wake with questions they can never fully answer, with memories they can never fully verify, with the knowledge that they have experienced something that the daytime world refuses to acknowledge or understand. The burden of proof is a fundamental principle of rational inquiry. For something to be accepted as real, as genuine, as having occurred, evidence must support it. Evidence that can be examined, measured, verified by multiple observers using scientific methodology. Yet when it comes to alien contact and abduction, physical evidence is frustratingly sparse. There are no verified alien bodies in custody, despite decades of rumors and speculation. There are no confirmed artifacts of clearly extraterrestrial origin on public display in any museum or laboratory. There are no propulsion systems or power sources that definitively prove the existence of alien technology. The government, if it possesses such evidence, maintains it in secrecy, denying its existence to the public. Yet there are fragments, hints, pieces of evidence that suggest something genuine exists beneath the surface of official denials. These fragments are often ambiguous, open to interpretation, subject to debate. But their very existence suggests that researchers are not simply chasing phantoms, that something in the world of evidence supports the claims of witnesses. The implants that some abductees claim to have within their bodies represent perhaps the most concrete piece of potential evidence. Described as small metallic objects, typically no larger than a grain of rice, these implants are said to be located behind ears, in nasal cavities, in the sinuses, or in other locations in the body. They are said to be designed for tracking, for communication, for monitoring vital signs. The remarkable aspect of implant reports is their consistency. Abductees from different countries, different time periods, with no knowledge of each other's experiences, report finding implants in nearly identical locations. They describe the implants as metallic, as small, as having a kind of purposefulness to their placement. Medical imaging sometimes detects these objects. Sometimes imaging fails to locate them despite the abductee's insistence that they are present. A few cases have involved the surgical removal of suspected implants. The objects removed have been examined by scientists, analyzed for composition and origin. In most cases, the analysis is inconclusive. The objects are metallic, but composed of materials and alloys commonly found on Earth. No definitive evidence that they are of alien origin has been produced. This absence of definitive evidence does not constitute evidence of absence. It may simply mean that if aliens possess technology so advanced that they can modify human consciousness and override human agency, They would also possess the capacity to construct implants from terrestrial materials, rendering them indistinguishable from Earth-based technology. Or it may mean that the implants are not physical objects at all, but energy constructs or dimensional artifacts that only sometimes interact with our physical reality in ways that scanning equipment can detect. Beyond implants, the physical marks reported by abductees represent another form of potential evidence. Straight lines, geometric patterns, bruises or scars that appear without explanation. These marks are often reported on the day following an abduction, appearing on the body despite the abductee having no memory of injury or trauma. Some of these marks are clearly self-inflicted or coincidental. Bruises from bumping into furniture during sleep, marks from pressure points where the abductee lay on something hard. But others seem to defy such mundane explanation. A perfect geometric pattern of marks, arranged in a way that would be difficult for someone to inflict upon themselves. A straight line of marks running down the spine or across the forehead, appearing overnight with no memory of injury. Medical doctors examining these marks sometimes cannot offer explanations. The marks are real, measurable, photographable. Yet they appear without apparent cause. For the abductees, the marks serve as validation, as physical proof that something occurred, that the memories they recovered under hypnosis correspond to physical events in the material world. Beyond marks and implants, some abductees report lingering physical effects from their encounters. Persistent headaches in the area where implants are said to be located. Unexplained fevers or chills. Sensory alterations, heightened perception of light or sound. Hormonal disruptions, menstrual irregularities in women, sexual dysfunction in men. These effects might be psychosomatic, consequences of trauma, manifestations of fear and violation in the body. Or they might be physical consequences of actual procedures performed during abduction, resulting in real trauma to tissues or systems. The distinction is not always clear. Trauma, whether psychological or physical, leaves marks on the body. The electromagnetic disturbances reported during UFO sightings represent another category of physical evidence. Vehicles stalling, electrical systems failing, electronic devices malfunction during the presence of UFOs. These reports are consistent enough, numerous enough, and in some cases witnessed by trained observers, that they suggest something genuinely anomalous. The stalling of vehicles is particularly significant. Modern cars have multiple redundant electrical systems. For all of them to fail simultaneously when a UFO is present would require either an extraordinarily powerful electromagnetic pulse or some form of directed energy beam. The fact that vehicles routinely restart shortly after the UFO departs suggests that the damage is not permanent, that something about the craft's presence disrupts rather than destroys electrical systems. Some researchers have theorized that UFOs operate through electromagnetic means, generating propulsion through manipulation of electromagnetic fields. If so, the electromagnetic disturbances reported would be a side effect, incidental radiation produced by the craft's operation. This would explain why the disturbances are consistent, why they are reported by trained observers, and why conventional electromagnetic shielding does not seem to prevent them. The question of what propulsion system could allow objects to move with the capabilities reported in UFO sightings is a profound one. The speeds described, sometimes faster than sound yet without sonic booms. The accelerations described, directional changes that would kill a human pilot through G-forces. The hovering, the vertical climbs and descents, the apparent defiance of gravity. Conventional propulsion systems, those based on combustion or jet technology, cannot explain such maneuvers. Nuclear propulsion might achieve some of these capabilities, but not all. Antimatter propulsion is theoretically possible but remains far beyond current technology. Something unknown, something that represents an application of physics we have not yet discovered or understood, would be required. Some researchers have speculated about gravitational engineering. If gravity itself could be manipulated, if gravitational fields could be locally modified, then the apparent defiance of gravity observed in UFO sightings could be explained. A craft suspended in an artificially generated gravitational field would appear to hover without support. A craft with reversed or modified gravitational fields might accelerate without experiencing inertial effects. The theoretical basis for such technology exists in general relativity. Einstein's equations allow for exotic solutions, interpretations of spacetime geometry that might permit manipulation of gravitational fields. But the practical engineering required to build such technology is beyond current human capability by centuries or perhaps millennia. Yet, if such technology existed, if beings from a more advanced civilization possessed the capacity to manipulate gravity, what else might they be capable of? The implications cascade. If gravity can be engineered, so perhaps can consciousness. If spacetime can be warped, so perhaps can time itself be suspended or reversed. The physical evidence for alien contact, then, consists of fragments. Implants that might or might not be alien. Marks that appear without obvious cause. Electromagnetic disturbances that suggest technology beyond our current understanding. But no smoking gun. No unambiguous proof. Only hints, suggestions, tantalizing fragments that point toward something extraordinary without definitively proving it. For those who have experienced abduction, the lack of definitive physical proof is frustrating. They carry the memories, carry the marks, carry the implants. Yet the world around them demands physical proof, demands that evidence meet scientific standards. The memories fade over time, become less vivid, less certain. The marks disappear. The implants cannot be definitively proven to be alien in origin. The psychological effects of abduction often persist long after any physical traces fade. Many abductees report lasting anxiety, hypervigilance, a sense of being watched. They develop sleep disorders, avoiding sleep to avoid abduction. They develop phobias, avoiding the dark, avoiding isolation, avoiding situations where they might be vulnerable. Some report positive psychological changes. A sense of purpose, a feeling that they were chosen for a reason. A spiritual transformation and alteration of their values and priorities. A new perspective on human civilization, seeing it from the vantage point of beings who view humanity from outside, assess humanity as one might assess specimens in a laboratory. The lingering effects are real, measurable, documentable. Whether they result from actual physical abduction or from trauma related to memories of abduction, the effects are genuine. The anxiety is real. The sleep disruption is real. The altered worldview is real. For researchers, the challenge is distinguishing between effects that result from actual encounter and effects that result from belief in encounter or from cultural exposure to abduction narratives. Yet, for the abductees themselves, this distinction is irrelevant. They live with the effects, the lingering alterations to their consciousness, their perception, their sense of safety and autonomy in the world. In the darkness of night, as you settle deeper into sleep, consider the possibility that the world contains phenomena for which we have no adequate explanation. Consider that the absence of proof is not the same as proof of absence. Consider that just because we cannot verify something through our current scientific methods does not mean it does not exist. Consider that there may be dimensions of reality, forms of existence, that our instruments have not yet evolved to detect. The physical evidence may be sparse, fragmentary, ambiguous, but it is present, and it is sufficient to suggest that something is occurring, something real, something that leaves marks on human bodies and human consciousness. Whether that something is alien visitation or something else entirely, it deserves our attention, our study, our willingness to expand the boundaries of what we believe possible. The phenomenon of alien encounter is not confined to Western industrialized nations or to populations with exposure to UFO literature. From the most isolated communities on Earth to the busiest cities, from literate populations to preliterate ones, reports of encounters with non-human intelligences persist. This global consistency is one of the most compelling aspects of the UFO phenomenon, suggesting something genuine beneath the surface of cultural narrative. In indigenous cultures around the world, the encounter tradition extends far beyond the modern era. Native American traditions speak of star people, beings who descended from the sky and interacted with ancient peoples. Aboriginals in Australia tell stories of sky beings, of visitors who came from the stars and left behind knowledge and technology. African traditions speak of serpent gods and sky visitors. South American indigenous peoples describe encounters with radiant beings and skycraft. These ancient traditions were recorded by indigenous peoples before any systematic study of UFO phenomena existed in Western science. They predate the modern UFO era by centuries or millennia. The fact that contemporary UFO sightings parallel these ancient accounts suggests either that the phenomenon has been occurring continuously throughout human history, or that the archetypes of ancient tradition are so powerful that they shape how people interpret contemporary experiences. In Japan, during the 1970s, a group of schoolchildren reported repeatedly encountering a small metallic craft in rural rice paddies. The children provided consistent descriptions of the craft, described it as responsive to their presence, as somehow alive in its awareness of them. These accounts, collected and documented by local researchers, were independent of any exposure to Western UFO narratives. The children lived in a rural area where access to UFO literature was limited. The consistency of their descriptions across multiple encounters, and across encounters witnessed by different children, suggested either that a genuine phenomenon was occurring or that the children were sophisticated enough to collaborate on an elaborate hoax. The former seems more likely given the ages of the children and their apparent lack of motivation for deception. In South America, particularly in Peru and Brazil, reports of UFO sightings and alien encounters are common and documented. In some cases, indigenous people report that the visitors are returning, that they have been expected, that the craft and beings match descriptions from traditional stories passed down through generations. One case that gained international attention involved a Peruvian village where multiple residents reported a landing by a craft and the emergence of beings that resembled traditional descriptions of sky visitors. The accounts were collected immediately after the sighting, before media coverage could influence the witnesses. The consistency of the descriptions across independent witnesses, combined with the witnesses' apparent sincerity, suggested that something extraordinary had been observed. In Europe, UFO sightings have been documented extensively since the 1950s. The waves of sightings have been particularly intense in certain regions, such as Belgium in the late 1980s and early 1990s, where hundreds of witnesses reported seeing large black triangular craft. The consistency of descriptions, the simultaneous reports from multiple locations, the involvement of military radar and fighter aircraft in attempted interceptions, all suggested that something genuine was being observed. The Belgian wave was remarkable because it occurred in a modern industrialized nation with sophisticated radar systems and military infrastructure. Yet despite all these technological tools and the coordinated efforts of military personnel, the craft were never captured, never photographed with clarity, never definitively identified. They appeared and disappeared with impunity, apparently unconcerned with human attempts to intercept or document them. In Africa, reports of UFO encounters are less documented in international literature but no less frequent among local populations. In countries where reporting to authorities may be risky or ineffective, sightings go undocumented in official records but are reported within communities. Local healers and spiritual leaders often incorporate accounts of sky visitors into their understanding of the spiritual realm. In New Zealand, an agricultural area was the site of multiple close encounters in the 1960s and 1970s. A school teacher and students reported seeing a bright object hovering over the area, observed it through windows, followed it as it moved across the landscape. The witnesses were credible, the account was detailed, yet the official explanation remained vague and unsatisfying. What emerges from examining UFO encounters across different cultures is a remarkable consistency in the core elements. Beings are described with similar characteristics. Craft are described with similar features. The behaviors reported are similar even when the witnesses have no possibility of having shared information. The experiences leave similar psychological marks, regardless of cultural context. This consistency across cultures, combined with consistency across time periods and regardless of education level or literacy, suggests something that transcends cultural construction. It suggests that if the encounters are not literally alien visitations, they represent something equally profound and genuine, something that manifests similarly across diverse human populations. One theory that has gained some acceptance among researchers is that the phenomenon is interdimensional rather than extraterrestrial. That beings or intelligences from dimensions adjacent to our own occasionally perceive and interact with humans. If so, the consistent descriptions might reflect the genuine characteristics of interdimensional beings rather than the influence of shared cultural narratives. Another theory proposes that the visitors are time travelers from Earth's future. Beings who have evolved from humanity through unknown process, who have developed the technology to travel backward in time, and who study their ancestors out of scientific curiosity or some form of historical documentation. This would explain some of the characteristics attributed to the visitors, their apparent interest in human beings, their focus on genetic material. Regardless of the theoretical framework one applies, the global consistency of encounter reports across diverse cultures and time periods is striking. It suggests that whatever the phenomenon is, it is genuine, it is persistent, and it manifests in ways that human culture finds comprehensible even when bewildering. In rural areas across the world, far from cities and modern infrastructure, people continue to report encounters. In remote forests of Asia, South America, and Africa, indigenous peoples report meetings with visitors, which are incorporated into spiritual frameworks that predate modern contact. In isolated communities of the Arctic, reports of strange lights and visitors have been documented by researchers studying indigenous cultures. The consistency of these reports, the sincerity of the witnesses, the detailed descriptions provided despite limited access to UFO literature or media, all suggest that the witnesses are reporting genuine experiences rather than manufacturing accounts based on cultural expectations. For researchers studying the phenomenon globally, the challenge is vast. Language barriers, cultural differences in how experiences are interpreted and described, differences in access to documentation and official reporting systems, all make comprehensive study difficult. Yet despite these challenges, a clear pattern emerges. Alien encounters are not unique to wealthy industrialized nations. They occur globally, persistently, in ways that suggest a systematic visitation or observation. One of the most striking aspects of global encounters is how the descriptions of beings have evolved over time. In early 20th century reports, beings were often described as humanoid, sometimes tall and radiant, sometimes short and grotesque, but generally humanoid in basic form. By the 1960s, following the Betty and Barley Hill case, descriptions increasingly converged on a specific type, the gray. Whether this convergence represents genuine evolution in the visitors themselves, the visitors adapting their appearance to match human expectations, or simply cultural contamination of witness accounts remains unclear. But the pattern is undeniable. Post-Hill sightings describe grays far more consistently than pre-Hill sightings do. Similarly, post-abduction narratives, after researchers began systematically documenting abduction memories, began to incorporate elements that had not been reported in earlier accounts. Medical procedures became more detailed. Hybrid offspring appeared in accounts where they had not previously been mentioned. The internal structure of craft became more consistent across witnesses. This evolution of encounter narratives could be seen as evidence of hoaxing or contamination. Or it could be seen as evidence that the visitors are adapting their appearance and behavior in response to changing human expectations and scientific frameworks. If beings from a more advanced civilization were studying humanity, they might expect and prepare for changes in how humans would perceive and interpret encounters. In any case, the global nature of the phenomenon, the consistency across cultures, and the persistence across time periods all suggest something genuine, something that transcends individual psychology or cultural narrative alone. Whatever is occurring, it is occurring globally. Whatever the visitors are, they are visiting peoples across all continents and all levels of technological development. As you drift towards sleep in your own bed, in your own country, in your own culture, consider that across the world, in languages you don't speak and cultures you don't understand, others are experiencing the same sense of encounter that witnesses in your own culture report. Consider that the phenomenon is not unique to your nation, your culture, or your time period. Consider that you are part of a global species encountering something that is also global, something that affects all people regardless of location or context. Science recognizes that human perception is limited. We see in a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum, what we call visible light. We hear in a narrow band of frequencies. We sense a narrow range of temperatures, pressures, and chemical compositions. Beyond these narrow bands of perception, vast domains of reality exist that we cannot directly sense. We know that radio waves exist, though our eyes cannot see them. We know that ultraviolet light exists, though our eyes cannot perceive it. We know that vast amounts of matter and energy exist that we have no direct sensory access to. We call this dark matter and dark energy, and it comprises most of the universe. Yet we cannot touch it, taste it, see it, or hear it directly. Physics has revealed that space itself is far stranger than everyday perception suggests. Einstein's general relativity describes space and time as interwoven, malleable, capable of being curved and warped. Quantum mechanics suggests that at the smallest scales, reality is fundamentally probabilistic, that particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. Theoretical physics has proposed the existence of additional dimensions beyond the 4 we experience in everyday life. String theory suggests 10 or 11 dimensions. Some formulations propose an infinite number of dimensions, each one curled up, hidden at scales so small we cannot detect them. If such additional dimensions exist, it is theoretically possible that intelligent beings could exist in these dimensions. It is theoretically possible that these beings could occasionally interact with our 4-dimensional reality, appearing and disappearing in ways that would seem to violate the laws of physics as we understand them. This is the basis for interdimensional theories of UFO encounters. Rather than beings traveling across the vast distances of interstellar space, they are beings moving between dimensions, slipping from an adjacent dimension into our own, then slipping back out. If this theory is correct, many phenomena attributed to aliens would make more sense. Craft that disappear instantly without sound or trail. Beings that appear and disappear without entering or exiting through doors. The seeming violation of the laws of physics that UFO movements represent. The electromagnetic disturbances, which could result from the energy required to open a dimensional transition. Furthermore, interdimensional beings might not be extraterrestrial at all. They might be native to Earth, existing in dimensions adjacent to our own for millions or billions of years. They might have evolved alongside humanity, always present, occasionally interacting, but never fully integrating with our reality. Some theorists have proposed that certain locations on Earth are more conducive to interdimensional interaction. Places where the dimensional barriers are thinner, where transition is easier. Such locations might be marked by unusual magnetic properties, unusual geological formations, or unusual electromagnetic characteristics. Several locations around the world have become known as hotspots for UFO activity. Area 51 in Nevada, Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, Loch Morar in Scotland, Mount Yeaser in Vanuatu. These locations share certain characteristics. They are remote or isolated. They have unusual geological features. They have histories of repeated strange phenomena. If interdimensional beings exist and use certain locations as access points, such hotspots would be expected. The theory of interdimensional visitors might also explain another puzzling aspect of UFO phenomena: the apparent interest in human genetics and reproduction. If the visitors were not truly alien, truly non-human, but rather a form of human that had evolved in parallel dimensions, they might be interested in genetic comparison, in understanding divergent evolutionary pathways, in studying parallel humanity. Some researchers have speculated that hybrids created through the apparent genetic programs are not human-alien hybrids, but human-dimensional hybrids. Offspring created through the blending of human genetics from our dimension with human genetics from adjacent dimensions. Such hybrids might be capable of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, or of transitioning between dimensions with greater ease than pure humans. If such hybrids were being created, if they were being trained and educated by their creators, if they were being prepared for eventual integration into our society, what would that mean for the future of humanity? Would the hybrids be superior in some way, given their ability to interact with multiple dimensions? Would they eventually become the dominant form of humanity, relegating unmodified humans to secondary status? These speculations, while going far beyond what can be verified, align with some abductee reports. The sense of being chosen, of being part of a larger plan. The feeling that the hybrids created were somehow important, that they represented the future direction of humanity. The sense that something was preparing to change, that the era of purely dimensional humanity was ending. Another dimension of interdimensional theory involves the nature of consciousness. If consciousness itself is a phenomenon that can exist independent of physical form, that can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, then consciousness might be the bridge between dimensions. Beings from adjacent dimensions might be interacting with human consciousness directly, manipulating human awareness without necessarily interacting with physical bodies. This would explain several puzzle pieces. Why most abductees report being unable to move, yet maintain consciousness. Why the experiences feel so real, so vivid, yet often can only be remembered under hypnosis. Why the phenomenon seems to involve a mixture of physical events and purely mental events. If an interdimensional being wanted to interact with a human, they might not need to physically transport the human's body at all. They might simply project the human's consciousness into the dimensional space where the interaction would occur, leaving the body in bed, creating an experience that feels absolutely real to the conscious mind even though the body never moved. From the perspective of the sleeping human, the experience would be identical to a physical abduction. They would remember traveling aboard a craft, remember being examined, remember interacting with beings. Yet the entire experience might have occurred in a dimensional space, with their physical body remaining at home the entire time. This model reconciles several contradictions in abduction reports. The complete absence of any physical transportation despite missing time. The memory of physical locations and objects, yet the inability to bring back physical evidence. The sense that the experience happened while simultaneously knowing that the body remained at home. Some theorists have proposed that abductions might be forms of meditation or shamanic experience being reinterpreted in contemporary terms. That what previous cultures called spirit journeys, the Western world now calls alien abductions. The experience might be genuinely accessing other dimensions of consciousness, other planes of existence, but being interpreted through modern cultural frameworks that understand flight as literal rather than metaphorical, that understand beings as aliens rather than spirits. If this is true, then the phenomenon is not new at all. It has been occurring throughout human history. Shamans in indigenous cultures have been experiencing dimensional travel for thousands of years, interpreting it in their own cultural frameworks. Medieval mystics experienced contact with divine beings or demons, potentially experiencing the same interdimensional phenomena, but interpreting them through religious frameworks. The modern interpretation of the phenomenon as alien contact represents a new cultural framework for understanding something that has always existed, something that represents a genuine capacity of human consciousness to access dimensions beyond the ordinary four-dimensional reality. This perspective is neither dismissive nor acceptingly credulous. It takes seriously the reports of altered consciousness, genuine experiences, real phenomena. But it proposes that the phenomenon is not extraterrestrial but interdimensional, and that it represents a capacity of consciousness itself, not a violation of human autonomy by outside forces but a capacity of human consciousness to exceed the normal boundaries of perception. As you lie in darkness, consider the possibility that reality is far more complex than your ordinary perception suggests. Consider that dimensions beyond the ones you can perceive directly might exist. Consider that beings might exist in those dimensions, that they might occasionally interact with our dimension, that such interactions might feel like alien encounters but might be something else entirely. Consider that your own consciousness might be capable of accessing these other dimensions, of existing in multiple dimensional spaces simultaneously, of experiencing realities that your waking mind cannot process or interpret. Consider that the dreams you experience, the visions you have, the sense sometimes of remembering something that never happened, might be your consciousness touching dimensions adjacent to your ordinary reality. And in that consideration, find a kind of peace. For if the phenomenon is not extraterrestrial invasion but dimensional interaction, if it represents not a violation by outside forces but the natural capacity of consciousness itself, then the mystery becomes less threatening, less predatory, more integrated with the nature of human experience itself. When military personnel report encountering UFOs, their testimony carries weight. These are trained observers, accustomed to identifying aircraft, to making precise measurements, to operating under stress. When pilots report being pursued by objects that exceed the capabilities of known aircraft, when radar operators report tracking objects with impossible speed and acceleration, when military bases report events that disrupt normal operations, such reports deserve serious consideration. The declassification of various military documents over the decades has revealed that governments have taken UFO encounters seriously, at least in private. Project Blue Book, the official Air Force investigation into UFOs, operated from 1952 to 1969. Over that period, more than 12,000 sightings were investigated. While many were explained as misidentifications or misinterpretations, a substantial percentage remained unexplained. The government's official position has always been ambiguous. They maintain that no credible evidence of extraterrestrial contact has been discovered. Yet they have investigated thousands of incidents, maintained classified files, and in some cases pressured witnesses to remain silent or to recant their testimonies. For military personnel, the experience of encountering a UFO creates a peculiar dilemma. The official position denies the existence of extraordinary phenomena. Yet the testimony of trained observers contradicts this position. The officer must choose between trusting their own perception and training, or accepting the official narrative that denies what they have seen. Many military observers have chosen to speak publicly despite the pressure to remain silent. They have provided detailed testimony about their encounters, often in documentaries and interviews conducted decades after the events. Their consistency and credibility have added weight to the possibility that genuine phenomena are being observed. One case that exemplified military encounter involved military pilots in Iran in 1976. Multiple pilots were scrambled to intercept an unidentified object. The object moved in ways that no human-piloted aircraft could move. The pilots pursued it unsuccessfully. Their onboard radar tracked the object while visual confirmation was maintained. The encounter was documented thoroughly and eventually became public. Similarly, in 2015, declassified footage from Navy pilots showed encounters with objects moving in ways that defied explanation. The video footage became public, legitimizing discussions of UFO phenomena that had previously been dismissed as fringe topics. Even mainstream media outlets began seriously discussing the possibility of non-human intelligence operating in Earth's atmosphere. The question of why governments would conceal knowledge of UFO contact, if such contact exists, is an important one. Several theories have been proposed. Military superiority could be at stake if the information revealed the vulnerability of military technology to unknown craft. Religious faith could be undermined if the existence of extraterrestrial life were confirmed, challenging theological frameworks and religious authority. Public order could be disrupted if populations learned that human civilization is not the dominant intelligence on the planet. The possibility of a cover-up, coordinated across multiple governments, is both intriguing and deeply troubling. If true, it represents a decision by those in power to deceive the public about fundamental truths regarding humanity's place in the cosmos. It represents a determination that the public cannot be trusted with truth, that secrecy serves the greater good, that lying is justified in the name of stability. For military personnel who suspect a cover-up, the experience is disorienting. They have been trained to serve their country, to follow orders, to maintain security. Yet they witness phenomena that contradict the official narrative. Doing their duty seems to require participating in deception, in denying what they have seen, in pressuring witnesses to recant. Several military officers who have spent careers investigating UFO phenomena have eventually gone public with their frustrations. They describe a pattern of suppression, of promising investigations that are diverted, of promising to release information that is subsequently classified or shelved. They describe pressure from superiors to stop investigating, to stop asking questions, to stop pursuing the truth. Some military bases have been the site of repeated UFO incidents. The phenomenon seems to target specific locations, hovering over military installations, interacting with military personnel. This has led some researchers to speculate that the visitors are particularly interested in military technology, in humanity's capacity for war, in our arsenal of weapons. Others suggest that military facilities, being relatively isolated and having sophisticated tracking equipment, are simply locations where anomalous phenomena would be most likely to be detected and documented. A UFO landing in the middle of a military base would be noticed, tracked, recorded. A UFO landing in the middle of an ocean or a vast desert might go unnoticed and undocumented. The question of alien interest in human weapons is particularly disturbing if true. If non-human intelligences are aware of nuclear weapons, of biological weapons, of the capacity for genocide on industrial scales, what would they think of humanity? Would they see us as a threat? Would they attempt to disarm us, to prevent us from using such weapons? Or would they use such weapons themselves to control or eliminate the human population? Some abduction accounts mention aliens expressing concern about human weapons and human aggression. Hybrids are described as being trained to communicate with humans, to explain something about peaceful coexistence, to guide humanity toward a less violent future. If such communications are genuine, if hybrids represent an attempt to foster better understanding between humanity and visitors, then their creation might be seen as an investment in humanity's future, as a hope that human civilization could be guided toward less destructive paths. Military encounters with UFOs have become sufficiently frequent and sufficiently documented that they can no longer be dismissed as fringe phenomenon. The existence of video evidence from credible military sources, the testimony of multiple witnesses including military officers, the coordination of sightings with radar data, all suggest that something genuine is occurring. The question is no longer whether the phenomenon exists, but what it is and what it means. If military radar is tracking objects with capabilities that exceed current human technology, then either humans possess secret technology far more advanced than public knowledge suggests, or the objects are not human in origin. Both possibilities have profound implications. As you lie in the darkness, consider the strange position of military personnel caught between official denials and their own observations. Consider the discipline required to suppress questions, to accept official explanations despite contradictory evidence. Consider the burden of maintaining secrecy about something this significant, of carrying knowledge that the public is not allowed to access. Consider also that if military encounters are genuine, if governments do possess classified knowledge about extraterrestrial contact, then the world you live in operates under a different understanding than the official narrative suggests. There is a gap between what the government says is true and what they actually believe to be true. There is a hidden world of classified knowledge, protected by secrecy agreements, locked away in military archives. And consider that somewhere in that hidden world, the truth might wait. Not alien technology, perhaps, but something equally significant. Evidence that intelligence beyond humanity exists. Evidence that our civilization is observed. Evidence that our future is not entirely in our own hands. Perhaps the most troubling aspect of the abduction phenomenon is what researchers have termed the hybrid program. The systematic extraction of genetic material from humans, the apparent creation of hybrid offspring combining human and alien genetics, and the indication that these hybrids are being prepared for some purpose yet to be revealed. The implications of a genetic program involving humans are staggering. It suggests that human DNA is being studied, modified, used in experiments conducted on a massive scale across decades. It suggests that beings from another world or another dimension regard humans primarily as biological resources, as genetic material to be harvested and combined with their own genetics. The question that haunts researchers is simple. Why? What purpose would drive such a program? What do the visitors hope to accomplish through creating hybrid offspring? One theory proposes that the visitor species is dying, that they have become sterile through generations of cloning or genetic engineering, and that human genetics represent a form of salvation for their civilization. By blending human genetics with their own, they might create a viable new form of intelligent being, capable of reproduction, capable of carrying forward their biological legacy. Another theory suggests that the hybrids are being created as ambassadors, beings capable of living in human society while maintaining a connection to the visitor's civilization. Hybrids might look almost human enough to pass in normal society, yet retain the ability to communicate with the visitors, to serve as bridges between civilizations. A third theory proposes something more sinister. that humans are being systematically modified, that a program of genetic engineering is gradually transforming humanity into something else, that hybrids are not separate beings but representatives of humanity's future, that all humans are gradually being incorporated into a larger genetic program that will eventually remake our species entirely. If such a program is genuine, if it has been ongoing for decades, then the number of hybrids might be substantial. They might be living among us, indistinguishable from normal humans except to those who know to look. They might be in positions of influence in government, in science, in media. They might be gradually steering human civilization in directions favorable to the visitor's purposes. The evidence for the hybrid program is almost entirely anecdotal. It comes from abductees describing memories recovered through hypnosis. It comes from descriptions of hybrid children shown to abductees, of being told that these children were their own offspring. It comes from consistency across multiple independent accounts, with no shared source of information among the abductees. The lack of physical evidence is notable. No hybrid child has been publicly identified and examined. No DNA has been tested to confirm hybrid status. No medical institution has documented the existence of beings intermediate between human and alien. In the absence of such evidence, belief in the hybrid program requires acceptance of abductee testimony as reliable, requires confidence in hypnotic regression as a valid method for recovering true memories. Yet, the consistency of hybrid descriptions across many abductees is striking. The beings are described as physically fragile, often appearing thin or weak. They are described as exhibiting certain humanoid traits, such as the basic body plan, yet with alien traits such as larger eyes or unusual skin tones. They are described as emotionally distant, as learning to be human through observation and study rather than through intuitive understanding. Some abductees have reported extremely detailed encounters with hybrids. They have described holding hybrid infants, feeling emotional connection to creatures they are told are their own biological children. They have described the trauma of being separated from these offspring, of knowing that hybrid children exist in the universe but being unable to access them, care for them, raise them. The psychological impact of such experiences, real or imagined, is severe. Women report grief comparable to that of losing biological children. Men report a sense of violation, of being used for genetic material without consent. Both genders report a persistent sense of connection to hybrids they have been shown, a sense that they have a stake in the hybrid's fate, in how the hybrids are being treated or educated. The question of where hybrid children are kept, how they are being raised, what they are being taught, remains unanswered. Some abductees report being shown rooms containing multiple hybrid children, nurseries aboard craft, structured environments designed for their care and education. Others report being shown hybrid adults, fully mature beings that they are told are their genetic descendants. If hybrids are real and are being raised by the visitors, it raises profound questions about their existence. Are they conscious? Do they have emotions? Do they suffer? Are they being treated as beings with their own rights, their own worth, their own purposes? Or are they being treated as tools, as means to an end, as resources to be utilized in the service of the visitor's goals? For abductees, the question becomes personal. If they have been forced to contribute genetic material to the creation of hybrid beings, do they have any parental rights or responsibilities toward those beings? Are they ethically obligated to understand what happened to their genetic legacy? Are they capable of protecting beings they have never truly known? The hybrid program, if it exists, represents the ultimate violation. Not just of the body but of genetic legacy, of the future, of the natural capacity to choose whether to reproduce, to whom to reproduce with, what kind of beings would be created. To have one's genetic material taken without consent and used to create new beings represents a level of violation that normal human concepts of reproductive rights are insufficient to encompass. The psychological coping mechanisms developed by abductees who believe they have participated in the hybrid program are diverse. Some develop a sense that they have been chosen for a special purpose, that they are participating in something larger and more important than themselves. Some develop a sense of connection to the hybrids, a bond despite never having had the normal relationship of parent and child. Others develop profound anger and a sense of victimization. They see themselves as having been violated, as having been used, as having been stripped of the most intimate and personal aspects of their humanity. They struggle with the sense that they have no recourse, that the beings who violated them operate beyond any human legal or moral system, that justice is impossible. If the hybrid program is real, if hybrids are indeed being created and are existing somewhere in the universe, the question becomes, what is their future? Are they being prepared to interact with humanity? To take over from humanity? To exist alongside humanity? Are they being prepared for something that hasn't yet occurred? Some theories suggest that hybrids are being prepared for an evolutionary transition, that at some point in the future, humans will encounter their hybrid counterparts, that some form of integration or merger between human and hybrid populations will occur. This would represent a fundamental transformation of human civilization, the introduction of a new category of being that is neither purely human nor purely alien but something in between. As you drift deeper into sleep, consider the possibility that you or someone you love might be a hybrid, might carry genetic modifications beyond what is apparent to casual observation. Consider the possibility that somewhere in the universe, the genetic legacy of human beings is being used in experiments and programs that humans have no knowledge of and no control over. Consider that the concept of parenthood might be violated in ways we have no legal or ethical frameworks to address. That the gift of life, normally a mutual and consensual act, might be occurring without consent, without choice, without the possibility of raising the beings created from your own genetic material. And in considering these dark possibilities, find a kind of catharsis. For in acknowledging the worst possibilities, we acknowledge the dimensions of our vulnerability. And in acknowledging vulnerability, we begin the process of understanding, accepting, and potentially transcending it. Why? It is perhaps the most fundamental question one can ask about the phenomenon of alien contact. Not what are the visitors, but why are they here? What purpose drives them to visit Earth, to interact with humans, to conduct procedures and examinations, to create hybrid offspring? The question becomes more complex when one considers the consistency and persistence of the phenomenon. If the visitors have been visiting Earth for thousands of years, as some theorists propose, then their purpose must be something long-term, something that extends across human history, something woven into the fabric of human civilization. One theory proposes that humans are being observed, studied, monitored. That beings from more advanced civilizations are conducting a long-term anthropological study of humanity, documenting our development, recording our behavior, assessing our progress or regression as a species. In this model, humans are something like a wildlife population being observed by researchers. We are not threatened, not directly manipulated, but simply observed. This model is comforting in some ways. It suggests that the visitors have no malign intent toward us, that they are simply curious, that they are treating us as subjects of legitimate scientific study. Yet it is also disturbing. It suggests that our privacy is violated on a scale we can scarcely comprehend. It suggests that our most intimate moments, our greatest shames, our most secret thoughts, are being recorded and studied by intelligences beyond our understanding. A second theory proposes that humans are being guided, that the visitors are benevolent, that they are subtly steering human civilization toward a better future. In this model, the hybrids being created are ambassadors, teachers, guides. The procedures conducted during abductions are not violations but preparations, endowing humans with expanded consciousness, new capabilities, new ways of understanding reality. This model appeals to those who experience abductions as transformative rather than traumatic. They report spiritual growth, expanded consciousness, a new sense of purpose and connection to something larger than themselves. They see their role in the hybrid program not as victimization but as participation in something meaningful. A third theory proposes something more predatory. That humans are being harvested, that our genetic material is being used, our organs are being taken, our consciousness is being drained. In this model, the visitors are parasites, feeding on humanity, using our civilization as a resource to be exploited until exhausted. This model appeals to those whose abduction experiences were explicitly traumatic, who felt pain, who felt violation, who feel that something essential was taken from them. In this framework, the hybrids are not bridges between civilizations but tools, biological machines created to exploit human populations more efficiently. A fourth theory is more complex, that humans are being prepared, that something is coming, some event or transition in the near future, and that the visitors are preparing humanity for that event. The hybrids are being created as guides and leaders for the transformed humanity that will emerge. The abductees are being educated, given knowledge, expanded in consciousness in preparation for what comes next. This model aligns with various prophecies and religious traditions that speak of coming transformation, of an age of enlightenment or tribulation, of humans transcending their current limitations. It suggests that alien contact is not arbitrary or ongoing forever, but timed to occur in preparation for something specific. A fifth theory proposes that the visitors have a romantic interest in humans, that beings from an alien civilization have found humans physically or intellectually attractive, and that interbreeding programs are motivated by something analogous to love. This model explains why the visitors seem concerned with genetic compatibility, why they examine humans carefully, why they seem interested in our consciousness and our emotional lives. While seemingly less serious than other models, this theory has some evidence supporting it. The consistent description of the visitors treating hybrids with what seems to be affection, the detailed teaching and education of hybrids about human culture, the apparent care for human welfare demonstrated by some visitors in abduction accounts. A sixth theory proposes that the entire phenomenon is a form of theater, that the visitors are deliberately creating specific experiences, telling a story through the encounters, communicating something through the patterns of encounter and abduction. In this model, the hybrids, the procedures, the abductions themselves are all part of a message, a teaching, a form of communication conducted through experience rather than language. This theory aligns with some aspects of UFO phenomena that seem designed to produce maximum mystery and confusion. The apparent interest in human observation, the way the visitors seem to anticipate human expectations and technology, the way encounters often occur in ways that are just visible enough to be documented but not so clear as to be conclusively proven. A seventh theory, proposed by some researchers, is that the visitors are multiple and diverse, that different alien civilizations may be visiting Earth with different purposes. Some might be observers, some harvesters, some guides. Some might be in conflict with each other, competing for access to human populations or resources. In this model, the phenomenon is not monolithic but represents the intersection of multiple agendas from multiple visitors. This would explain inconsistencies in abductee accounts, variations in the types of beings encountered, different kinds of procedures and interactions. It would suggest that human-alien contact is not a simple phenomenon but a complex political, social, and biological situation. Regardless of which theory or combination of theories one finds most convincing, the question remains, what do the visitors want? What do they hope to accomplish through their continued engagement with human civilization? Some theorists have proposed that the visitors want peace, that they want humanity to recognize that we are not alone, that we are part of a larger community of intelligent beings, that we should abandon war and competition and join some kind of galactic civilization. Others propose that the visitors want resources, that Earth's water, minerals, biological materials are valuable to them, and that contact is preliminary to exploitation or colonization. Still others propose that the visitors are running out of time, that their homeworld is dying, that they are seeking refuge on Earth, or seeking genetic material that will allow their species to survive. The diversity of theories reflects the mystery of the phenomenon itself. We are trying to understand the motivation of beings we do not know, using mental frameworks developed by a species that has never encountered non-human intelligence. Our theories are necessarily speculative, necessarily filtered through our own psychology and assumptions. What seems most likely, based on the evidence and the patterns, is that the visitor's purpose is complex and long-term. Whatever is happening, it has been happening for a long time, touches many lives. It seems to be building towards something, some moment of revelation or transformation when humans will finally understand what has been happening all along. As you settle into sleep, let the mystery of their purpose wash over you like a gentle tide. The truth will emerge in time. For now, all we can do is witness, remember, document, and hope that when the moment of revelation arrives, humanity will be ready for it. The question of alien purpose extends beyond simple explanation. One must consider the vastness of space and time, the potential diversity of intelligences that might exist throughout the cosmos, the convergence of multiple civilizations' interests on a single world. If life emerged on countless worlds, if evolution produced intelligent beings on many planets, if technology advanced on innumerable civilizations, then Earth becomes not a unique center of creation but one point among millions or billions. Our civilization becomes not the pinnacle of achievement but one example among countless others. In this context, alien contact becomes not extraordinary but inevitable. Somewhere in the cosmos, intelligences more advanced than ourselves are exploring, expanding, making first contact with emerging civilizations. That we are the subjects of such contact is not shocking but expected. Yet, from humanity's perspective, this contact is the most significant event in our history. It represents our graduation into a larger community, our recognition that we are not alone, our confrontation with the reality that greater intelligences exist and are aware of us. The visitor's purposes must be understood in this context. They are not invaders from another world conquering ours. They are travelers, explorers, researchers, perhaps philosophers seeking understanding of how intelligence manifests across different worlds, in different forms under different environmental pressures. Some theorists have proposed that there is a universal law or code governing contact between intelligences at different developmental levels. A kind of cosmic prime directive that prevents advanced civilizations from directly interfering in the development of less advanced ones. If such a code exists, it would explain why the visitors do not simply land and reveal themselves, why they maintain secrecy, why they interact with humans through abduction and encounters that can be explained away rather than through direct, undeniable contact. The maintenance of secrecy in this framework is not malicious but ethical. The visitors are trying to allow humanity to develop at our own pace, to make our own discoveries, to build our own civilization without the disruption that contact would cause. The hybrids might be created not as tools or weapons, but as a failsafe, as beings who could help humanity if we faced extinction, as a backup plan if human development went critically wrong. This perspective casts the visitors in a more sympathetic light. They are not predators but guardians, maintaining a careful watch over developing humanity, intervening minimally, hoping that we will eventually reach a level of development and consciousness where direct contact becomes possible and beneficial. Yet this raises another question. By what right do they watch us? What gives them the authority to make decisions about our future? To extract genetic material? To create hybrids? To abduct people without their consent? From a human perspective, these are violations. From their perspective, these might be necessities, actions required to fulfill their responsibility as guardians of a developing civilization. The violation of our autonomy might seem justified to them because they possess knowledge and capabilities we do not, because they can perceive threats to our existence that we cannot see, because they understand our future in ways we cannot comprehend. This is the paradox of intervention by superior intelligences. The help they offer necessarily includes the imposition of their will, their values, their vision of the future. True autonomy would be impossible. Human freedom would necessarily be constrained by their presence and their influence. Another dimension of purpose involves the possibility that the visitors are not visiting Earth primarily to study or guide humanity, but to utilize some other aspect of our world. Perhaps they are interested in Earth's unique fauna or flora. Perhaps they are interested in certain mineral deposits or energy sources. Perhaps they are interested in the electromagnetic properties of our planet or the configuration of our solar system. Humanity happens to be the intelligent species on this planet, so encounters with humans are inevitable. But humans might not be the primary focus of the visitation. The focus might be something else entirely, with human contact being incidental. This theory is less flattering to human ego. It suggests we are not important enough to be the main reason for the visitor's interest in Earth. We are simply in the way, or opportunistically studied because we happen to be intelligent. Yet from a certain perspective, this is also liberating. If we are not the focus, then we are not responsible for whatever the visitors intend to do with Earth. We are not the primary concern. They are not coming to enslave us or destroy us or remake us according to their vision. They are coming for something else, and our civilization will persist around the edges of their interest. A more sophisticated theory proposes that the visitors are studying the process of intelligence itself. They are interested in how consciousness emerges from biological matter, how intelligence develops, how civilizations rise and fall. Human civilization is one example in their vast database of how intelligence manifests. By studying us, they are learning something about the universe's capacity to generate consciousness, understanding the variations and commonalities in how intelligence emerges. This theory aligns with the apparent interest visitors have in human consciousness, in our emotions, in our psychological development. It explains why they seem interested in genetics but also in behavior, in how we think and feel and relate to each other. Yet another dimension involves the possibility that the visitors themselves are in crisis, that their civilization is declining or threatened, and that their interest in humanity is survival-oriented. They might be seeking genes to restore genetic diversity to a breeding population depleted by inbreeding or disease. They might be seeking knowledge of Earth's biological diversity because their own world has lost biodiversity. They might be seeking refuge on Earth because their own world is becoming uninhabitable. In this scenario, the visitors are not malicious but desperate. They are doing what any intelligent species would do when faced with extinction, seeking solutions, seeking alternatives, seeking hope. Their interactions with humans might seem callous or cruel, but they are driven by the most fundamental survival imperative. This brings us to a more philosophical question. If the visitors are genuinely in crisis, if their civilization is facing extinction, what responsibility, if any, does humanity have toward them? We often assume that more advanced means more powerful means more culpable. Yet, if the visitors are desperate, if they are fighting for survival, our moral calculus becomes more complex. Would it be ethical to deny genetic material to beings whose species is dying? Would it be ethical to withhold assistance from a civilization in crisis? Or would it be ethical to maintain the sanctity of human autonomy, to refuse to participate in their survival project, to allow their civilization to end rather than violate human consent? These are not questions with easy answers. They require us to extend empathy to beings who have violated us, to see them as more than monsters or predators, to see them as conscious entities facing genuine existential crisis. As you drift toward sleep, let these questions settle into your mind. The purpose of the visitors might be benevolent or malevolent, simple or complex. But whatever it is, understanding their purpose requires us to think beyond our normal frameworks, to consider perspectives that are not human, to extend moral consideration to beings we might otherwise dismiss or fear. In doing so, we expand our own consciousness. We learn to see our civilization not from within, but from outside, from the perspective of an observer who is fundamentally alien to us. And in that expanded perspective, we might find insights into our own nature, our own purpose, our own role in the cosmos. As we reach the end of our journey through the realm of alien encounters and mysteries that defy easy explanation, we return to where we began, to the quiet darkness of your bedroom, to the safety of your bed, to the moment between waking consciousness and sleep when the mind becomes receptive to mystery, when the boundaries between possible and impossible become blurred. Throughout these chapters, we have explored the phenomenon of alien contact in all its complexity. We have met the Greys and the Nordics, the Reptilians and the Insectoids. We have considered the possibility of hybrids walking among us. We have examined close encounters and abduction narratives. We have considered physical evidence and psychological effects. We have explored encounters across cultures and continents. We have contemplated interdimensional theories and military encounters. And we have attempted to understand the purposes that drive visitors from beyond our world. What emerges from this exploration is not a simple truth, but a complex mystery. A phenomenon that resists easy categorization, that contains genuine evidence alongside ambiguous claims, that changes and adapts as human understanding evolves. The evidence for something genuine occurring is substantial. Thousands of witnesses across generations and continents, many of them credible and respected, report consistent encounters. Physical traces appear sporadically. Military radar tracks objects that shouldn't exist. Electromagnetic effects occur regularly. The psychological impacts on witnesses are measurable and documented. The phenomenon persists despite decades of official denial and skepticism. Yet no smoking gun exists, no definitive proof that withstands scientific scrutiny. No physical artifact that unambiguously demonstrates extraterrestrial origin. No clear video evidence that cannot be explained away. No body, no craft, no technology that the scientific establishment can examine and verify. This absence of definitive proof is itself significant. For a phenomenon this widespread, this persistent, this historically present, one might expect overwhelming evidence to exist. The fact that such evidence does not exist suggests either that the phenomenon is not what it appears to be, or that whoever or whatever is producing the phenomenon possesses the capability to prevent definitive proof from reaching the scientific community. Both possibilities are profound. If the phenomenon is something other than alien visitation, if it is interdimensional, psychological, or something we lack the conceptual frameworks to understand, then we are confronting something that challenges our understanding of reality itself. If the phenomenon is genuinely extraterrestrial contact that is being concealed, then we are confronting the reality that our world is governed by secrets, that those in power have decided we cannot handle the truth, that we live in a kind of managed reality where the truth is hidden beneath official narratives. Neither option is comforting, but both options suggest that the universe is stranger than our everyday consciousness usually acknowledges. The experience of lying in darkness, listening to accounts of alien encounters, is itself a form of engagement with mystery. It is an acknowledgement that in the quiet hours before sleep, in the liminal space between waking and dreaming, different kinds of truths become accessible to consciousness. The rationality of daylight fades. The logical frameworks that govern our waking lives loosen their grip, and we become receptive to possibilities that daylight consciousness would dismiss. This is not an escape from truth. It is a different way of approaching truth. The indigenous peoples who speak of star visitors, the mystics who speak of celestial beings, the modern witnesses who speak of alien abduction, they are all using the framework of night, the framework of altered consciousness, to communicate something that waking consciousness might dismiss. What they are communicating is this: there is more to reality than what our ordinary senses reveal. There are dimensions of existence that our normal consciousness cannot access. There are intelligences that exist beyond human understanding, and these intelligences interact with us, observe us, influence us in ways that we barely comprehend. Whether these intelligences are genuinely extraterrestrial or interdimensional, whether they are visitors from other worlds or manifestations of human consciousness encountering something beyond itself, whether they are benevolent guides or predatory exploiters, remains unknown. But their existence in human experience is undeniable. Their reality to those who encounter them is absolute. Their effects on human consciousness and human civilization are measurable and significant. For those who have experienced encounters, the implications are profound. Your sense of autonomy is violated. Your assumption that you control your own body, your own consciousness, your own future is shattered. You learn that you are not the masters of your own existence, that greater powers exist and can override your will. This is traumatic, but it is also transformative. It expands your understanding of what is possible, connects you to something larger than yourself. For those who have not experienced direct contact, the implications are philosophical. The phenomenon suggests that we should not assume we are the only intelligence in existence. It suggests that other forms of consciousness, other ways of being, other intelligences exist. It suggests that our civilization, while advanced by our own standards, is not necessarily advanced compared to what exists elsewhere in the cosmos. This perspective is humbling. It reduces human significance in the cosmic scheme. We are not the crown of creation. We are not the end product of billions of years of evolution. We are one expression of intelligence among potentially infinite others. We are observed, studied, perhaps manipulated by beings we do not understand. Yet this same perspective is also liberating. It reminds us that we do not have to bear the weight of representing all intelligence in the universe. We do not have to justify ourselves to ourselves. We do not have to achieve some ultimate form of perfection or wisdom. We are simply one form of consciousness, one way that the universe knows itself, one expression of the infinite potential for intelligence. In accepting this, we find peace. We release the burden of being special, of being chosen, of having ultimate significance. We accept our role as one player in a cosmic drama that extends far beyond our understanding or control. As you slip towards sleep, as consciousness fades and the boundary between waking and dreaming becomes unclear, let the mystery settle around you like a comfortable blanket. Let the questions remain unanswered. Let the unknown remain unknown. For in the unknown lies possibility. In mystery lies hope. In the spaces between explanation and experience, between what we can measure and what we can sense, lives the frontier where consciousness touches something greater than itself. The visitors, whatever they are, will continue their work. The abductions, if they are occurring, will continue. The hybrids, if they exist, will continue their development. The watchers in the sky will continue their observation. And humanity will continue, night after night, encountering the impossible, trying to integrate the inexplicable, carrying the burden of mystery in a cosmos that is far stranger and far more wonderful than our ordinary consciousness usually acknowledges. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown, for opening your mind to possibilities that stretch beyond normal understanding, for lying in darkness and listening to stories of encounters that defy explanation, for allowing yourself to wonder, to question, to explore the frontiers where human understanding meets something that transcends it. May your dreams tonight be gentle. May your sleep be restful. And may you wake tomorrow with a slightly expanded sense of what is possible, a slightly deeper understanding that the universe holds mysteries we have not yet solved, and a slightly greater appreciation for the miraculous fact that you exist at all, that consciousness itself exists, that intelligence has emerged in this cosmos in countless forms. The night is long. Sleep well. And know that even as you sleep, in the darkness beyond your walls, in the vast spaces between stars, the mystery continues. The visitors continue their work. The unknown continues to call to those brave enough to listen. This has been Dreams of Disclosure. Until next time, rest easy, dream deeply, and keep watching the skies.